Today I'm going to talk about analog forestry and agroforestry and also our work in Lanka Organic Agriculture movement to promote agroecology, regenerative agriculture, organic agriculture and agroforestry, also analog forestry. We have started a new place in Mattegoda where we are going to open it in June 5th. In 2024, it will be open for the public for them to learn about regenerative agriculture, analog forestry and also organic agriculture, agroforestry and things like that. When you talk about agroforestry, sometimes it can be confused for people because when you plant a few trees in a tea land, people can call it an agroforest, but real agroforestry is planting diverse species and getting the farmers to get some income and other product which is used by the people. Analog forestry is different. In analog forestry, we talk about the restoration. Whole world is facing a problem with desertification, climate change, global warming, deforestation, species loss, things like that. In analog forestry, we talk about restoring the planet life support system. What is analog forestry? Analog forestry is an ecologically restoration tool that helps to restore the life support system for the planet, represented health, biodiverse ecosystem. So when you do analog forestry, we concentrate on developing the natural forest structure which is copied or mimic from the mother nature. So if you ask me to do an analog forest in an area, first I have to study the closest natural forest, meaning that I have to study the structure and the function of the natural forest close to the site where I am going to implement the analog forestry. So for that we use the physiognomic classification which is developed by Crushler and further developed by Dr. Ranil Senanayake, the creator of the analog forest and analog forestry. So we use the Crushler notation or the physiognomic classification to understand and evaluate the current land ecological valuation in the given area. And then we do the same in the natural forest and we compare and we do the gap analysis and then we can come up with our plan where we use the Sri Lankan database which we have developed over the time and we can replace the plant according to the mother nature's plan, which means natural forest plan, and we develop our development plan to plant trees, shrubs, lianes, herbs and things like that in a different layer. So in analog forestry we create ecological functions, we follow the ecological succession to develop or mature our forestry system. So what is ecological succession? When you clear a plot of land, it takes some time for grasses to come. When the grasses comes, it will slowly fix the soil and there will be a thin layer of roots which will be in there and that will fix the soil and there will be some moisture underneath the small plants which will allow the secondary species to come. So that is the process of succession. So we follow the natural succession and we mimic the forest and the function to create a natural forest. The advantage of analog forest is that it can be implemented by indigenous people, small farmers, state owners, home gardens and any area where you can improve the economic viability of particular land, and that way we can support the livelihood of the people. Now if you look at the forestry in the world, nowadays they are talking about domestic forest. So that means in Indonesia, in Kalimantan, and they are planting some trees and also they are planting rattan, and the cycle can be, first harvest can be get into 8 years and then it can go to 30 years, and then also they are planting benzene and also damar in the forest, and forest function will go as a natural forest and it will be a long-term thing. But in analog forestry we will not only look at few species, all the other agroforestry system are looking at handful of species. But in analog forestry model, our design can increase the utility species, that means the people what they can use up to 30-40 species in a different layers. So there will be a ground cover, a shrub layer and also mid canopy, canopy, emergent. So we replace all those structure with a utility plants where we can generate income for the people, and then it will be helpful for the bees and also the birds, the butterflies and all that. So because the habitat is just like the natural forest and the people can create the habitat for other biodiversity, what we call it non-target species in analog forest. And analog forestry is also important because at the moment the world is facing deforestation, climate change and things like that. And analog forestry will eventually give other environmental services like carbon dioxide absorption, providing oxygen, and also providing or increasing the photosynthesis biomass, which will contribute to the making of cloud condensation nuclei. And that way analog forestry is much advanced than any of the agroforestry system because it's talk about carbon fixation and all the other environmental services plus biodiversity conservation. None of the agroforestry system in the world are so concerned about biodiversity. In analog forestry, when we design the analog forest, what we can do is we can design the forest the way the owner needs. If the owner wants to have crops like coffee and cardamom and cinnamon, or other crops like nutmeg, cloves, banana, pineapple, whatever the species, they can spread in different layers, and underneath the modified habitat they can grow their crops. But in other agroforestry system, they will be only concerning about 2 or 3 species, and it will be mainly a monoculture. So when you compare analog forest and the agroforest, there are vast difference with the species composition and species dynamics. And also analog forestry can be considered as a very good restoration tool which can restore the degraded forest in the world. You know, it's one of the biggest challenge when you do slash and burn. That means you cut the forest and burn it, and you will destroy the soil, and when the rain comes, all the soil will be going down. So there has to be a way to rebuild the soil. So if you try to grow certain plants in once degraded soil, it is very difficult. But analog forestry is a gradual way of planting trees and looking after, and it's a way of silviculture to restore the soil and restore the habitat. So therefore analog forestry will be considered as a very good restoration tool for the current problem in the world, wherever you have the degraded forest or something where you can do the restoration. And analog forestry will create ecologically stable and socio-economically productive landscapes. That's another advantage. So the world is support system are threatened by the deforestation, monoculture plantation, land grabs and degradation. So all of those which can be opportunities for restoration. And analog forestry is a complex and holistic form of silviculture, minimizing the external inputs such as agrochemicals and fossil fuel. In analog forestry, we minimize the external inputs such as agrochemical and fossil fuel. We bring the biodiversity into the given forest by increasing the habitat and also providing food plants for butterflies, things like that. And when you do the analog forestry, first what you will do is, as I told you, it's a restoration tool. You need to study the area to be developed, and you need to see what vegetation, what plants are there, and then you will study the closest natural forest. You use the physiognomic classification developed by Ranil Senanayaka and the Chrysler. When you study the natural forest structure and the function, you study the land to be developed, then you can do the gap analysis and see what is missing. So you are mimicking the natural forest with the structure and the function in analog forestry. That is the first step, and then you do the ecological evaluation of the plot, and you see a spider graph, you see what biodiversity is there, you see what's the soil profile, what's the economic value, and when you analyze the spider graph, then you can see there is area to be improved, there is always room to be improved. So you can target your design by choosing the database of trees and plants to develop your plan. And then you have your base map. In the base map you have the house or a well and rocks or whatever it is but is available, and few trees here and there. And then you have your development plan which has a soil erosion control like hedgerows. It can be salt hedgerows or the bunds and compost heaps, and your planting can be in detail in your development plan. So then you slowly start planting by using the database, because now you know that you have the database and you can choose the plants according to that. So that way, if you are developing a place for touristic like tourism, ecotourism, then you can use aesthetic plants and ornamental plants. But if you are mainly concentrating on economic value, you can choose about 10 species of crops like cinnamon, cardamom, like different layers, nutmeg, cloves, banana, avocado, jack, mangosteen, rambutan, whatever in a different layers. So therefore you have a holistic approach and planting trees which will be useful for the mankind.